Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to grecochess, the YouTube channel of chess. In the previous video, we eliminated one more of the chess.com bots, the number 35 or the fifth of the advanced ones. We defeated it both with the white pieces. It took us a second attempt, and with the black on the first attempt. And between bots, we have the puzzles, the chess.com puzzles, and I would like to invite you to play with us. When a new puzzle appears, then please pause and try to see if you can find it. The rules of the game are the following. Chess.com is going to provide us one puzzle after another until we get three of them wrong. And the first few of them are very simple, but they may look simple when you do them as a puzzle rush, but in the real game, it's quite often that players miss this opportunity, so it's better if we train ourselves. So in the real game, we are not going to miss them, and most of all, we're not going to provide our opponents the opportunities for such cases. The first few ones are very simple, then they go to tougher and tougher until we get three of them wrong. Until now, the best we've ever had is 50 correct. Let's see if we can beat that record, or at least see if we can learn and enjoy while doing so. If you have a chessboard, you might even want to put your pieces on the chessboard as in every puzzle and try to see if you can do it, or an electronic chessboard or whatever. But let's start the game. Let's start this video once again. And let me share the screen with you. And here we are. And as we get correct answers, it will show at the bottom the values. You see, we have survival mode, meaning we don't have any time constraint. And this will let me discuss with you my thoughts as we continue along this road. You may see that it says that we have a record of 59, which is not correct because I have mentioned in the past there was one occasion when through a kind of an error of chess.com they were sending the same puzzles again and again, and of course I was doing them again and again and got an artificial 59, which I don't consider my real record. But let's start today's this puzzle rush, and I'm hitting the play button. And off we go. We start as black. Yes, you see at the top it says black to move. And I believe if you've seen the previous ones, and even if you haven't, the answer is quite simple. It's a back rank problem. Rook will go from c3 to c1. Let me draw the arrow. And that's it. Of course, white might interpose, place the rook on d1, but then we take the rook. We got the first one correct. The second one, similar story. Rook from c6 goes to c8. And black might interpose with these two rooks, but we'll grab the rooks if they appear, and that's it. Got second correct. Third one. Here, it's almost like a back rank, but it's a different issue. It is a case of the g6 pawn that doesn't allow the white king to go to h7. So if the rook goes to d8, you see checkmate. The king, not yet. Black might interpose the rook on f8. Then we grab the rook. Exactly. Next one here. Another back rank issue. They're not exactly mate in one because black may interpose, but this doesn't change anything. If the rook goes to a8, what can black do? Put the rook to b8. The bishop can go to d8. The queen can go to e8, but that's the most they can do. It's checkmate after. Wait a minute. I apologize because black's king can go to f7. We should be very careful. Just checking here doesn't help too much. I check here. King goes to f7. And the question is, and then what? We miss something. This is not a background. This is called the ladder mate because we have the rook from c1 going to c8. That is the answer. And now what can black do? Place the bishop on d8, the queen on e8, and it's only the two rooks together that deliver the mate. It's not one rook taking care of a weak back rank. Fortunately, we didn't do it, otherwise we'd have the first wrong at puzzle after only three of them correct. We got it right. It shows that in chess you always need to double check everything, no matter how trivial it may seem. Let's see here what happens if the rook goes from a3 to a1. Rook may go to c8, queen may go to d8, but I think that's all that black can do because we have a king on f3 that controls the g2 square. And let's see if this is the answer. Yep, 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 we got a fourth one right. The fifth one. I think this is one move checkmate because the rook on a6 with the pawns on g5 and f4 can deliver a one move checkmate. Here we are. Here. If queen goes to c7, I mean, how can white make checks, of course, without losing material? It seems that if queen goes to c7, king goes to e8. And then can queen go to e8? If queen goes to e8, then you have the black queen goes to d8. What if instead, let's see something else. Queen goes, no, I don't want to move my queen because if the wrong move, that's it. King goes to e8, we said. And then queen goes to d7. King goes to f8. And then queen goes to f7. That should be made in three moves. Let's see if this is the answer. Oh, computer didn't want us to continue. Here we have a wonderful battery of the keys of death. Look at the g2 square. It's protected only by the king, nothing else. And you have two black pieces, queen on g6 and bishop on c6 aiming there. So all you need to do is move your queen to g2 and it's made. Let's continue now. If queen goes to f7, this is a collaboration between queen and rook on the 7th rank. King can go to d8 and then queen goes to d7. I think that should be made. Here, again, case of death, the square of g7. Look at the black, the king only protects next to that, but knight on e6 and queen on g3 aim to this square, so if queen goes to g7, it's a case of death as I call it. Here, you have queen on h3 and rook on h8 near the black king. So if queen goes to h2, then the rook f1 is going to not allow black to survive. Here what's happening. If queen takes the knight on f6, black goes to g8 and queen goes to g7 and it should be mate. We finished the first 12. You see the 12 green squares with the check marks from left to right. Now we're going to the second line. Until now they were quite simple in the sense that if you knew how to do correctly the first check, and in most cases it was very obvious. In one case we had to double check. Fortunately we got it right, and then that's it. Here queen goes to e7 check, king goes to g8, queen goes to e8 check, and then we have the back rank issue. Rook would go to take, and then rook goes to e8 and it's mate. I can't see how black can survive this thing. Let's see. Good. Now here, something somewhat similar, but now it's black to play. Queen goes to f2 check, king to h1, queen to f1 check, rook takes on f1, and the black rook from f8 goes to f1 mate. Yes, yes, and yes. Here, smothered mates. If knight goes to a7, it's a check. And where can the black king go? First of all, when the knight checks, then you cannot interpose a piece. It's either black will take the knight, Oh, king will move, but this knight a7, black does not control the square at all, and the black king is surrounded by so many of its own pieces. Knight b8, rook d8, pawn b7, pawn c7, bishop d7, the king has nowhere to go. We got it. Here, let's see what's happening. The white rook survives only so long as the white king is next to that. But if rook from e7 checks on e2, what can black do? If they place a knight on f2, they lose it. Of course, you may think so well because black has so much more material. But lose a rook, they're still ahead. But rook takes it. King can go. No matter where king goes, the queen is lost. From the beginning. Here, and king goes, of course, to h1, things are even easier. But even if it goes to g1, they lose the queen. What happens after they lose the queen? Black has a rook and queen versus two rooks and bishop. 19 points for white and 19 for black, 16 for white, if I count correctly. Black is still ahead with a very dangerous attack. So if I was black, I would definitely start with my rook on e2, takes it, win it, yes. And now, I don't think there's a mate. So, the problem is the following. If black takes the queen, they are going to lose the rook, but then they can win the bishop on h6, so still there'll be quite a lot of material ahead. Got it. Here, the power of the pin. If the knight on d5 takes on f6, what can black do? They cannot take back the knight because of the pin. The queen is on e2. And the king is surrounded by its own pieces. Queen d8, bishop f8, and pawns d7, e7, f7. So this is kind of a smaller mate held by the pin. Let's see what happens with this puzzle now. It seems like one more checkmate. It is rook with the help of the king plus the pawn, if the pawn was not here, because once the rook goes to h1, look at the poor king. What can it do? It cannot stay on the first rank because rook controls. There's nothing to interpose to take the rook. Second rank, king controls f2, e2, and pawn controls d2 square. So that should be made. Here, another one move checkmate. If queen goes to h1, where can the king go? Nowhere. The square g4 is controlled by the h5 pawn. Finished. Let's look at this one. It seems that materially, white is very much ahead by an extra rook and an extra bishop and an extra pawn. But black can take the rook on e1. What can white do? They only have one legal move. Queen goes here. And then what I would do as a follow-up, if rook goes here, not so easy follow-up. Clearly, winning a rook will place black's advantage to only, white's advantage to only one extra bishop in the pawn, but still they are ahead in material. Move number 2. I would place my rook here. And where can the king go? Can only go to a1 and then they lose the queen with a mate. Let's see if this is the case. Unfortunately, the arrows overlap. I'm not sure what I can do for that. Exactly, the mate. What can we do here? If knight goes to g6, square check, It looks like a smaller mate, but this time we don't have the pin. Really, if the queen of the rook was in the h5, it would be a mate. But now the h pawn can take back. Is there a follow-up? I think so. If queen goes to h4, the king cannot survive. That's it. Let's see here what's happening. If knight goes to e6 and queen takes it, rook goes to e2, and because the pin, because the rook is supported by the knight, that's why it's important to use the g2 rook and not the a1 rook. The queen, if the queen takes the rook, once again, the bishop takes, the knight here takes a queen. But does black really need to take the pawn? What happens if they don't take the pawn? There are lots of threats, for example, knight on c7 and win the rook on g7. But if black wins, stays no, on c7, let's assume that black does nothing. Then you have the knight can go to c7, check, and we have a fork, and wins the rook. And let's try to do it correctly with the arrows. Second, third, first, second, and this is the third move. White wins the rook. But can black do something? First of all, they cannot castle once the knight is on e6 because it controls d8 and f8 squares. If black decides to defend somehow, then white could send maybe the rooks on the e file and attack the queen very heavily. Let's see. No, exactly. This is the second move. Black perhaps better. If I was in a real game for black, I would try to avoid a continuation, not just blindly take the knight. Perhaps either my a rook elsewhere or my king. Ideally the a rook, so at least the castling possibility is still open for the future. But you saw this is the answer. We got 22 correct. Next one. Another tricky one that involves a queen sacrifice. Because once queen goes to h2, it looks like the kiss of death, but king can take the queen because it's not supported. But let's see the follow-up. Rook goes to h1. And now the only legal move for black is to put the queen somewhere in a7, h6 or h5, and then rook will take it for mate. And that's it. One more to do 24 and finish the second line here. Till now, nothing wrong. Let's see what's happening here. If queen goes to f8, the white queen, check. What can black do? It doesn't seem anything. Until now, with a few exceptions, and where we only want the queen, all the others are checkmates. In the future, of course, they're going to become tougher. Let's see what's happening here. Yes, we finished the first two horizontal lines, 24 out of 24. In almost all of them, I think a couple were exceptions. In almost all of them, in 2-3 moves, there was checkmate. In a couple, of course, one needs to know the patterns. In a couple of them, we won a queen. Not all the way to mate, but let's see what's happening here. If the queen goes from b6 to b2, it checkmate because then rook on d1 blocks the white king. Got that right? Let's see the next one, the power of the two bishops. But before we even... Here, I don't think this is a mate. Let's see material-wise. 10 points for white, 12 for black. So black is nominally 2 points ahead of by an exchange. But white has a very dangerous pawn on c7, one square away from promotion, but we can't promote it because we have this bishop here. Look what's happening. This goes here, bishop is going to take the pawn. Yes, we're going to win the bishop later, but we are stuck with two bishops and 3.9 versus 9, meaning, and then black is going to take this bishop, so it's not even versus 9, then black is winning. They have at least an exchange extra. So that's not the answer. What is the answer here? I think this is really tricky, because if the bishop goes to d3, threatens the rook, and if black bishop takes a bishop, then pawn promotes. But what if, let's see here, there is a what if case. The rook goes to e1 with a check. So now the rook is not attacked by the white bishop any longer. The king would need to go to here. And once the rook is saved, then we take the other bishop. And after black, for example, use the pawn to take back, then we can promote. And the rook cannot go somewhere to block this pawn, because if it goes to c1, we have the bishop on b2. So it seems that this is the answer, unless if it is, because too many times we thought we had the correct answer. If it's not a mating combination, it's tough to see if this is the best possible, if there's something else, if there is a tricky answer or what. But let's place a bishop on d3. Yep. King goes to d2, yep. Now a pawn cannot promote, but we can win the rook. And you see here, we are going to continue with two bishops versus one. Here, this is king and pawn ending. Here, these are becoming difficult. It's not a mating, and the material we are dealing is one pawn. And you may think a whole combination to just win a pawn. Well, what's happening is that whoever wins the other side's pawn may promote their own pawn, has at least a draw guaranteed. So there are two possibilities for white to begin with. Either king goes to f6 or pawn goes to g5. Let's see what can happen. If white sends the pawn to f6, black has lost his pawn, but they'll try to see if they can win this pawn. King goes here, takes the pawn, king goes here, and we lost a pawn. What now if we start with the pawn going to g5? If black pushes the pawn, of course, clearly pawn, ideally would send it to d6. It's faster path for promotion, and let black keep their f6 pawn. The king, where can it go? No matter where it goes, it's surrounded by the white king. And so I think the first move should be pawn goes to g5. Now, second move. Yes, we got the first one right, but in this puzzle, we need to have everything correct. If king goes to f6, king goes here. King wins a pawn, king goes here. And then we push the pawn. I think that should be it. I don't see what else can black do. Pawn to g6, and we did it. Let's see here what's happening. This looks like another back rank, because if queen goes to d7 check, king goes to b8. And you may wonder, so what? Queen goes to d8 check, rook takes. And then a rook goes to d8, its mate. It's the fastest way. I'm not saying it's the only way. Yep, that's what we got, 28 correct. Let's continue now. Here, it's a little tricky one. Do we need to sacrifice a knight? Oh no, this is a case of forks and pins. One needs to know that this is, if you don't know it, to find it of your own is very, very difficult. Yes, viewers, please try to find it on your own. Even if you don't find it, don't worry about it, but the effort that you're going to put will pay off. And I think I know the answer. Of course, there's always a chance of making it wrong, but from what I know, Bishop goes here, and you see the black queen is pinned. No matter where it's going to get lost. So its only hope to survive, at least for one move, is take the bishop. But then the knight will go to c7, and you see a wonderful triple fork is attacking the king on e8, the queen on b5, and the rook on a8, and of course the king moves and we win the queen. Yep, yep, and we win the queen. Good. Win the queen for the price of a bishop. We got 29 correct. Will we make it 30? Let's see. The back rank of black is, excuse me, of white back rank is very weak, but there's one problem that we don't have access for the time being. There's only one open file A, and we don't have a piece there. What if we put the queen on A8? Is it made in mate one move? No, because black has enough time to defend. If only we could put a queen to A7 and have a double attack. No, the rook can go here. But even like that, even if the queen could magically fly to a1, the bishop could go to f1 and at least stop for the time being the checkmate. Yes, we love to pin the opponent pieces, but it cannot be the answer to this problem because there is no immediate win like that. Let's see what can we do to make things better. Let's think for a while. What can we threat? If we push the pawn to g6 to g5 to threaten the queen can just check it with a check. That's not the case. Can the knight go anywhere to attack the black queen? The knight could go maybe to d3 and attack it, but then the bishop can take it. What else can we threaten? Can we have a double threat? I think there is a nasty trick. If queen goes to, think of it of your own, my viewers. We eliminate some possibilities. Think what else can it be, because I have an idea in my mind and I'm going to share it with you, assuming you froze your video and you try to work on that. Queen goes to d7 to c7 and attacks the rook on b6. The rook has many squares to go. For let's assume how many squares? I'm saying many, not that many. It can go to a6, c6, c6. Not only that, it also threatens the white queen. It can go to d6. No, it will be taken by the queen. It can go to f6. The rook has exactly 3 squares to go, and there is no way. Of course, the bishop cannot support it because light color and this is a dark color. The queen has no access to go there, but let's assume, for instance, that the rook, no, the queen goes here, and the rook goes here. Doesn't matter if it is this one square or any of the other two I mentioned, but let's put it here. So also the black queen is threatened. Then the knight is going to move from e4 to f3 with a check. And then queen takes queen. But you maybe wonder, what if black, instead of excuse me, what if knight, instead of moving the king, they place the queen. Let's do it once again. Queen goes here, rook goes here to attack the white queen, because otherwise it's even easier. Knight goes here, and you see that if the rook went anywhere else, if the queen would take the knight, we win the queen. But now, if the rook is here, look what white can do. Queen goes here, rook goes here. Knight check, queen takes knight, pawn takes queen, and rook takes queen now. So we're not that much ahead. If anything, we lost a knight until here, but then pawn could take the bishop. And black may take the rook if he wants. Let's try with this arrow. They're not so easy. We take the bishop. Rook takes rook. King goes, for example, here to threaten the rook. And no matter what white does, the pawn is going to promote queen checkmate. And if they push a pawn to avoid a checkmate, the pawn will still promote, not the mate, but we cannot even win the rook. Let's see if this is the answer. It's very tempting, many more combinations, not a checkmate necessarily, but I don't think white can avoid it. Let's see if this is the answer. Yes. Oh, the rook went to h6, made the life even easier. c6 would make a life tougher. Yes, that's it. 30 moves correct, 30 of 30. And that will only become tougher and tougher. Now, if queen could magically fly to h7, it's made, but it cannot. And if it uses 2 moves to go there, if for example goes to h6, the black queen can take the knight on f6. What can we do instead? In addition to everything else, a queen is under attack. If the queen goes to g5, protects the knight, protects itself, then there's a question of so what? Oh, but there's something else. If queen goes to h6, it's true that we are going to lose a knight on f6. The queen will take it, because otherwise queen will go to h7 mate, but then queen goes to f8, wins the rook and mate. Yep, 31 correct. And they become tougher and tougher along the way. Now, let's see. Here it's black to move. Black would like to promote the h2 pawn to h1, but there is one little detail. The rook on h6 will grab it. Can we block the path? Not with the king, of course, because we're not supposed to put a king in check, but what if knight goes to, from f3 goes to h4? If rook takes it, king, if rook takes the knight, king takes the rook, pawn may go here, but the pawn goes here with promotion. What if knight goes here and white ignores it and sends the pawn here? Then our pawn promotes first with the check. I think that should be the answer. Too many chess games are decided by an interference. You think you're stopping your opponent's pawn, and then at the last moment they'll put the piece in the middle, and you cannot take the promoting pawn. Yep. I think we just promote. Anything else? We need to stop the pawn on c7 before it promotes. How? If the king was not on g3, we check from h2 and win the pawn. We need to check the king, but there are not too many ways to check. Queen can go to h2 or g2. This is a tough one because it's not good. What we need to do is find a way to win the pawn at c7. The best way to do it, it seems, is if the queen can check the king from a square that controls both b2 and c7. What squares are these? Clearly, e5 is one of them. b7 is there. Now, if the queen goes to h2 and g2 can start a series of checks, but which will lead the pawn? Not easy to find. But at least g2, so you have more options for the future. So I would place in the real game the queen to g2. Because what else can black do? Yes. Question, the next move. We got the second correct. Still, I told you it's quite a few moves until we grasp the pawn. Where can we go? If we go to f3, what else can we do? Queen has to go to f3 to check. There's another way because the pawn on d5 is blocking our way. If we just grab the pawn, white wins the queen and we don't even have a check. So queen goes to 3. Ah, correct. You don't even want the rest of it. In a real game, you need to know the rest of it. Here, it's a checkmate, but without starting the check, I believe. Queen goes to h5. And if black does nothing, queen goes to h7 mate. If black pushes the pawn to g6, then queen goes to h8 mate. What can white do to stop it? First of all, what can black do to stop it? They cannot check the white king as far as I know. If the rook goes to e8, queen goes to h7 check, king goes to f8, and queen to h8 mate. So I think this is the answer. I can't see how black can stop it. If they move the pawn to g6, we said queen goes to h8 mate. These two bishops are very powerful. Yep, that's it. A checkmate where the first move is not a check. Let's see here what's going to happen. Ooh, white is under check. And how many legal moves we have? Either we win the knight, take the knight to the bishop, but then we're going to lose the bishop to the rook, or king can go to f1 or h1. If king goes to f1 or h1, I don't see a follow-up, and black has too many pieces near king. The most tempting is to take the knight to the bishop, but then the rook takes the bishop. And then what can we do? I see kind of a follow-up. If queen goes to e2, we attack the rook, and also we attack the a6 pawn. So we win a pawn. So what? That is one possibility. Any other possibility? Not that I can see anything else. Anything more promising. This, oh yes, you get a pawn. You are attacking strongly, but I don't see more. Let's. What else can it be? Sometimes you really have to use the what else logic. Yep, until now we got it correct. The first move correct. If this is correct, then the only follow-up I see is queen goes to e2, threaten both the rook on f3 and the pawn on a6. Here there is a problem. The pawn f2 is attacked, and if we do nothing, if black would play again, they could win a queen and a pawn for the price of two rooks, which is not decisive. We're not losing the game, but we're not winning either. I think if we go to a6, yep. Question, what is the next move? Uh, One could think of queen going to a8 check. And what black can do. The knight was not here. Yes, then black has no the cannot place queen or knight here because of the rook of b1, but they can place the queen on c8. Let's see again. White checks on a8, black replies queen c8. And so what, one may think? The rook cannot go to b8, but it goes and the knight will take it. Queen goes to a5 check. And then so what? Oh, something else. Forget about queen going to a8. What if rook goes to b7? Where can the black queen go? No matter where it goes, it is in danger of queen to a8. Unless it goes to c8. No, black cannot, for example, take the pawn on f8. I think the most dangerous for it's either queen to a8 or rook to b7. And I think rook to b7 is but then knight can go here to c5. Then queen goes to a8. Yes, if rook goes to b7, and knight goes to c5, then black has f4. So if we win the queen, black also takes our queen. And the rook is in danger. So I don't see this going on. Let's try queen going to a8. Yep, they don't want follow up. Fortunately, because I have no idea what I would do now. Here, got 34 correct. Let's see if we can get the 35th. If the knight somehow disappears, for example, it checks, king can only go to e1 or e2. If knight checks from f3, the pawn cannot take it because of the pin. Where can the king go? It can go to d1. I don't see anywhere else. And the rook goes to d8. Check. Yes, I don't think how white can survive. Yes, and rook goes to d8 check. And we win the two intermediate pieces, and that's it. We got 35 correct. We look have 36. The third row also completely correct without errors. Here, let's see what's happening. How can white check? Queen can go from e4 to f4. And where can black go? They can only go to h5. But if queen goes to h6 check, no, once again, let's redo the arrows. Till we master the arrows. The arrows. Here, goes here, and queen goes here, and that should be made. Hope I'm not missing something. Good, 36. You see the three first lines from left to right, 36 out of 36, all of them correct. This looks at making one move if one can think the correct way, meaning forget about the e file, although it is open and although black has a queen and a rook there, it seems to be controlling completely, but it's not going to work. What is going to work is if the queen goes to h3. Will it? Because king can go to g1. Let's see. There's a question of the and then. Doesn't seem to be working. What if queen went to e2 instead? King can go either here or there, and so what? Well, if queen goes to h3 check, if black would, and king goes to g1, if black would play two wins in a row, first king goes here, and then it's made. But can white do something to stop it? Queen cannot check from e1 or e2 because e1 you have the knight to c3, e2 you have the queen takes queen, and if rook takes queen, there's no follow-up, king to g2, and you just exchange the rooks. And white has 3 extra pawns, so you cannot just exchange pieces and hope for a winning ending. The ending will be losing. We must finish it now. And the only first move I can see, and let's see what will happen later, is queen goes to h3. Yes. I'm glad they don't want the follow-up because I didn't see any follow-up. Unless you want to tell you, get the first move correct and that's it. Let's see the next move. If rook goes to e1, check, king goes to g2. Here we have a queen goes to, assuming of course black does not want to sacrifice their queen. Queen goes to d4 check, and then they win the rook. Here, king goes here to b2. I'm sorry, rook goes to d8, king goes to g7. Queen goes to d4 check, and no matter what king does, queen takes a rook. Yep, yep, d4, and now we win the rook. Good. 38 correct. Now let's see the next one. They become tougher and tougher. Here clearly there is no checkmate anywhere near. One would like to place the knight on c7, attack the rook, but then the black knight on a6 will take the white knight. If we exchange here, I don't see a follow-up. But the black queen on b2 is in a not very nice spot. Can we trap it? How? If rook goes to b1, where can the black queen go? You see, not too many squares. Forget about this diagonal. The white knights will grab it. Forget about here. Forget about here. Can only go to a2. The question is, and then what? If knight goes, for example, to c3, where can black queen go? Can only go to a3. But then the rook could go to b3, and I think now the black queen is trapped. Let's see if this is the answer, because winning the queen, even if you have to sacrifice a piece, an enormous advantage, even though it's not checkmate. Yes. Knight will go to c3. Yes. And rook goes to b3. I think that's it. And pawn will take the queen. Clearly 39. Let's see if we can make them 40 the correct ones. If queen goes to c5 check, where can the black, what can white do? Place a knight. If they place a knight, then queen wins queen. If they place the king on d2, queen goes to c2, king goes to e1 or e3. What's the follow-up? Then we may have the bishop coming from f8. They cannot see any first move other than queen going to c5 and checking. Then we can think what to do once the king goes to d2. Can we trap the queen? No. If we send the pawn to b6, queen takes the pawn on a6. Okay, if we take, what happens if we take the knight? Queen check here, bishop check there. And what is the material balance? We have one material the same. Can we just win the knight? But black is a very dangerous, white is a dangerous attack. Queen goes to a8 check. Bishop goes to b5 check. I think it's too dangerous. What happened? I accidentally hit the button the wrong way. We got one wrong, and this is, I don't even know what's the correct answer to that. We'll see it later. Somehow accidentally pressed the button without thinking about the solos. We'll see later, but we got 39 correct. It's a pity if we lose because of that. It's one thing to have the answer wrong. Not even sure what exactly I hit. Here, our rook is under attack, but we can take the black rook. I cannot see anything else. Yes. Now, can we take the knight? I think so. Then we have queen and rook versus queen. Yeah. Now there's a check. We have to be careful because the pawn on f3. What can we do? The king has come in. Of course, forget about losing the rook. The king can go h1 or f1. f1 means that queen goes to d1 check. There's no follow-up because of our rook. King to h1 means what? It's clearly mate. So to just stay in the game alive, king has to go to f1. Correct. We got 40 correct. One wrong, and we have no idea if we really got it wrong or just a mouse slip. Here, this is a case of knight helping the queen because the queen checks from a8. It is made. Black may interpose the queen or the rook, but that's it. Here, what can we do? We want a pawn to get promoted, but the bishop on a2 is, will grab it. And yes, we can win the bishop, but then the a pawn is very dangerous. So what we're going to do is we're going to block the bishop with a check with a knight. Now, will we take it with the king or with a pawn? Or does it make a difference? The story is the following, that there's going to be a race between this pawn and the other pawn. And we don't want, if we take the pawn, what happens if we take the pawn? See what's going to happen. We promote first, but black promotes with the check because the king owns d4. That's why the king needs to go to d5, even though it might seem tempting to push the other pawn next to square. No, king goes here, and now you'll see that we promote first without black checking. That was the correct answer. Let's see here what's happening. If queen checks from e4, I think it's mate in one move. What can I do? Nothing, because a knight on h2 controls f1. Rook 2 goes to d8 check, king to f7, and then queen to f8. Rook to d8 check clearly, and then what? King to f7. Then either queen or rook has to go. If queen goes either way, rather, king escapes on g6, and the question is, what is the follow-up? At least if queen is in f8, can go to e8. So if let's do it once again. Rook, king, queen goes here, king goes here, and queen will go here, and then at least we're under a very strong attack, although I don't see all the way until the mate. Oh, what if queen goes to h5 check? That is a very strong one. Queen has to go to h5, you'll see why. Because if king goes to e7, queen goes here, mate. If pawn goes here, queen goes here, mate. So queen, forget about f8. We were thinking if rook or queen should go. If queen goes to h5, and queen goes to e8, it's mate. Good, we got it. Next one. The black king is in a very precarious case, definitely, but how can we take advantage? Queen cannot checkmate from h5, the black king will win it. If rook goes to h3 check, Or the queen cannot even move from where it is because of the pin. So queen cannot move anywhere. So if rook goes to h3, because it's the only promising thing I see, and then the other rook goes to g3. If the other rook goes to g3 here, what can the black king do? Only can place their queen on g4 maybe. And now the other rook will go to h5, that should be made. Yes. What else? What can we do here? If rook goes to e8, rook takes, queen takes rook, uh, bishop goes to f8, queen goes to f7, and we're talking about mate. Let's do the arrows. Check rook, queen takes here, bishop goes to f8, queen goes to f7 check, king goes to h8, queen to f8 mate. If I'm correct. Oh no, black did not take the rook place, the bishop, so rook cannot take rook, queen will take us. It's a tricky one. What are we supposed to do? I guess if queen goes to e7, threatening f7. Of course, bishop cannot take because of the pin. Queen goes to e7 and then threatens f7. Yep. Okay, we got to check, but we have to reply one with the other. King will go to g2, and I don't think there's a follow-up. We win the queen, and we got it right. 46 correct, 1 year record, and we have done better. If this wrong one, I have no idea what happened there. We'll see it later. I think I accidentally hit a move without even thinking, and most likely the move was not even one of the candidates, let alone the correct one. Here, what happens if queen goes to... Well, if bishop goes to d6, then it's going to be mate in h2, and how can black stop it? Of course, if they take the bishop, we win the white queen. The queen goes to h3 with a check, we win the white queen. Anything else that they can do? Not that I can see. If they go here to pin a queen, then the rook will take the queen. I think rook, bishop goes... I don't think there's any other direct move. Bishop goes to d6 because if queen checks from g5, so what? King goes to h1, I don't see follow-up. Yes? Here we have to be careful. Because if queen takes pawn, king takes rook. If queen checks from g5, again we lose a rook. If rook takes pawn and rook takes rook, then queen goes to h2 check. It seems black is defending. Seems the most promising if rook takes pawn and we lose a rook, sacrifice the rook. Of course, a puzzle, who cares? But in a real game, we cannot just sacrifice rooks like that without the follow-up. We'll win a second pawn, yes. And then if rook goes to h3, queen will take the rook. That's not the answer. Cannot block. The only thing that has some promise, but it's with the sacrifice of a rook if rook takes on f2. Because let's see the follow-up. Queen takes on h2. If rook goes to g3 check, there are at least two ways to get lost, and I don't see a follow-up. I'm going to put the rook on f2. We can cross my fingers. What else can I say? No, wrong. Here we need to be careful. It's again two pawns versus two pawns. I think if you take the pawn here, no matter what black does, if you take the pawn here, black goes here. We go here, black takes a pawn. Pawn goes here, and this pawn is faster. Then if the king goes here, king goes here, and again we lose this pawn. King, king. It's a case of what they call Zug's fangs when you wish you didn't need to play, but not exactly. Of course, we cannot push a pawn here. This pawn cannot move. This cannot push it because we lose it and we lose the game. So the king either goes to b5 or a5. It's tempting to take the pawn, but sometimes this is the wrong answer. If we cannot win, to get a throw, we need the opponent to have the a pawn instead of the c pawn. If we cannot win a draw, he can go like that. Here, 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 here. Is it even a draw, this thing? Yes, it's a rook pawn, but can a king block it anyway? No. So I will go on a limb. I'm going to take the a5 pawn and cross my fingers. Wrong. So we got 46 correct, one of our best records, and see what did we do wrong. And unfortunately, one of them, it was a mouse slip here. 46, one of the best records we had. We're thinking, should we check or let's try again. Is the check my first thought or take? No, what was it then? Okay. Ooh, okay, with the bishop. Okay, I would have it wrong either way or rather, so not too much to cry about that. I don't think we have found. Let's see the next one, the last two ones. We try to play and we place the bishop here, and they put the king there. I'm not sure what's the next one. Could it be here? No. Let's see the solution. No, rook has to go to d3. Difficult to find it. And let's see the last one. Let's see the solution. Is king going here? Yes, and then what? Oh, yes. That should have been the answer. Okay. We got 46 correct. Thanks for being with us. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned out of that. This is grecochess. I'm Harilos Eniziris. Thanks for watching. Thanks to all the viewers, the subscriptions, the likes, and the comments. In the comments, please tell us, have you tried these puzzles? How did you do? How did you do the puzzles that we had? Were you able to get correct the ones we got wrong? But until the next video, for now, goodbye.